taking responsibility. When you are called home, when you are somehow struck by the absolutely mysterious and irrevocable desire to know the truth of who you are, then you must be willing to put aside every story of separation. Every story of separation is a story of war. Human beings have been making war in every culture for a very long time. Culture is a reflection of the individual mind, and the individual mind is a reflection of the cultural mind. Since you are hearing this, I assume you are interested in peace in your own mind. You are not waiting for them to make peace. This is good news, because war is fought to get others to do it our way, so that we can live in peace. When you stop waiting for them, and instead shift your attention to your own mind, then you can recognize the tendency toward war in your own mind. The tendencies of totalitarianism, hate, revenge, and holding on. And you can recognize the suffering that these tendencies continue to deliver. Somehow, in the face of it all, you find you want peace. You are sick and tired of the war within your own mind. You may even express it in a conscious prayer, a plea for help, for understanding, for deliverance, for grace. Grace is here now. It is knocking at your door. You have a chance to be at peace in this moment. You only need to accept the invitation of your own heart right now, regardless of outer or inner circumstances, and let yourself sink into the peace of your innermost being. Unless all of us take the responsibility for our own inner peace, the wars will continue. We cannot wait any longer for someone else to change. We cannot wait for someone else to forgive us so that then we can forgive them. We cannot wait for someone else to say they are sorry. Peace cannot be postponed. Recognize that to whatever degree the war is going on in your own mind, it is based on one thing: the firm belief that you are a separate entity, separate from your parents, your children, your lover, or your enemy. All wars are based upon the ignorance of our own true nature and the illusion of separation. When you firmly believe that you are separate from the totality, separate from peace, separate from love, you protect yourself. That protection takes many forms, involving personal and territorial identification. The horror is that if what you are protecting is the thought of who you are, it does not in reality even exist. It is only a thought, and whenever a thought is honestly investigated, it is found to have no inherent reality. Yet this thought of who you are has immeasurable power, because it becomes the filter of all experiences of reality. When you look through tinted glass, reality takes on that tint. It isn't that reality is tinted. The tinted glass mediates and distorts reality. People fight for the distortion that this I, as an individual or as a group, is separate from all other beings. And yet that I is actually nothing. It is a made-up story. Yet in the belief that the story is reality, there is colossal tragedy and suffering. When this I that is assumed to be real and separate is examined by consciousness, it is discovered to be none other than consciousness itself. As a conscious human being, you have the opportunity to discover that never, not even for an instant, is it possible to be separate from consciousness, from the source of everything, from God. Once you discover this directly, you then broadcast it with every breath you take. Whether you speak of this discovery or never speak again, you will broadcast it through the natural radiance of your being. In your willingness to take that chance, to accept that invitation, you will naturally share that peace everywhere. At this point in time, in this theater of consciousness, you have the opportunity to discover what is deeper than human being, what is before human being. That beingness is actually the source of human being. It is the source of plant being, animal being, sentient being, and insentient being. That beingness is alive with intelligence and presence, and it wants to know itself in you so that it can know itself everywhere. Choosing peace over problems. In the interest of peace, perhaps it is time to take an honest look at what you consider to be the problems in your life. In order to even reflect on a problem, you will see that first you have to go into memories of the past to generate a story of the supposed problem. This is a moment of choice, and this choice is present in every moment of your life. Generally, we choose to remember the past to recreate our problems. If we choose not to regenerate them, what does that mean about their importance? How can we know we have learned the lesson? We have an investment in the problem's importance, so that we go back to the past to conjure it up again. This is called rebirth. This is the choice to be reborn with the same problems, stories, and miseries, day by day. Once we are aware of that choice, we have the possibility of recognizing exactly what is required to keep any problem alive. It is necessary to invest time, energy, and effort on what was to keep feeding the importance of the problem. We search for answers to alleviate our problems and to end our suffering. But the search follows the rebirth, a rebirth that we have actually chosen. The choice we often make is to be reborn as the sufferer, rather than simply being here as nobody, as nothing. The willingness to be nothing, to defend against nothing, can lead to exceedingly intense feelings. A great fear can arise. I could really disappear here, and then the whole of my life will be of no actual importance. But you have to understand that this is going to happen anyway. You really will disappear at some point. And even though you may make great contributions in your life, finally they too will disappear. So the question becomes, are you willing, at least for this moment, to not be reborn? If you are, then you can recognize what is unborn, what remains alive without story, without suffering, without problem. Recognize what remains alive and let its spaciousness, its peace, be revealed as your own heart. You can recognize it as yourself, having nothing to do with birth or death. If you are willing to be true to that recognition, then rebirth is not a problem, because then your story, your problems, are consciously recognized as appearing in the vast intelligence of who you truly are. Then you know yourself as essentially free of any past. The past can be welcomed, can be learned from, and can be appreciated in its full spectrum of beauty and horror. Victim no longer. No matter what the world is reflecting, whether circumstances are beautiful or terrifying, if your internal story is one of victimhood, you will suffer. It is very simple. If you are quite certain that you aren't telling yourself a story of victimization, and yet you continue to suffer, then I suggest you are lying to yourself. You are telling yourself some thread of an ancient story of how you have been wronged. Whether it is a story of how God or your parents or circumstances have wronged you, or how you have wronged yourself, it is all a story of you being the victim. Even the most violent aggressors, when the superficial layer of aggression is cracked, have a story of having been wronged. Striking out in anger or revenge always involves a story of victimization. Seeing how this victim story plays out in your own life is an important step toward realizing true freedom. When you really see it, you see that it has to be recreated each time it plays. It may surface in your mind through momentum, but to play it through takes energy, attention, belief, emotion, and some kind of masochistic pleasure in the pain. Yes, it's shocking. To see this operating within our own mind can be quite disturbing. The willingness to realize the truth of yourself, the willingness to be free, is the willingness to no longer be a victim, regardless of pain, circumstances, or the actions of others. To stop being a victim doesn't mean to trivialize the horror in your life, to deny it, gloss over it, or repress it. It means that you can fully meet whatever appears. You don't have to hide, run, justify, wail, curse, or moan. You can just meet life as it is. Are you willing to let your stories of victimization go? Are you willing to let all of those horrible aggressors go unpunished? At a certain point, you have to be willing to just call it off. Yes, there has been horrible suffering, and you have been on both ends of it. You have perpetuated it, and you have experienced it directed at you. Are you willing to end it? You are free to suffer, and you are free to stop suffering. No one can end it but you. That is where your freedom is. Conscious freedom is the freedom to meet suffering consciously, and then consciously choose to let it go. The bondage is in being unaware of the choice. You can choose to be free, or you can choose to suffer. It is up to you. The power of forgiveness. Everyone has experienced the sweet release of forgiveness, as well as the hard coldness of not forgiving. You know the difference, and you know the investment in the story that keeps a lack of forgiveness in place. You also know the relief when you actually forgive and let go of the burden. Our parents were not perfect. They consciously or unconsciously did things that were harmful to us, as our grandparents did things that were harmful to our parents. Our lovers, our children, our governments, and our competing tribes have harmed us. Now is the time to forgive. Horrible things are continually being done all over the planet, in our own individual minds and in the collective mind. To forgive these horrors does not necessarily mean to forget. You can forgive and let go without forgetting. A huge learning and humbling occurs when you are willing to see the story of humanity in all of its horrors. Yet you can also recognize how much effort is needed to hang on to the story. You can see that all of the effort and attention put into hanging on are actually a meditation on not forgiving. The stories continue to replay with an obsession over what should have been done or what might be done again. Continuing to replay the story saps your energy. It is exhausting. I honor the need to remember and to witness the horror that has been done and is still being done. But usually we bring to that memory more hatred, suffering, and misery, which ensures even more hatred, suffering, and misery. After the war in Yugoslavia in 1999, I saw a news clip of a home video filmed by a man who said he was making the video so that his children could see what had been done to them, so that they would never forgive or forget. The horrors occurring at that time were themselves in retaliation for what one group of people had previously done to the other. The futility and the waste of this kind of tribal warfare is going on within our own minds as well. I'm not going to let go of what they did to me because it was wrong. Yes, wrongs have been done and are still being done. There's no need to forget or deny the wrongs that have been done both to you and by you, but you can let go of suffering over them. Forgive them, for they know not what they do, is the truth. Any war that is going on because of what happened yesterday is a result of ignorance, of holding on to some idea of revenge. It is very tempting to hold on to these kinds of views because there is some pleasure in it, and that pleasure must be recognized. It is a pleasure of egoic righteousness. When you are unwilling to forgive, and you are holding on to a story of your suffering and who did it to you, you are cursing them, whether consciously or unconsciously. You must be willing to stop the karma with yourself. Be willing to say, no, this time it goes no further than me. This is the willingness to be at peace. The willingness to forgive is a natural outgrowth of the willingness to be free, and gives you the clarity to recognize the temptation to hold on. I once called my mother on Mother's Day. My mother was a sarcastic and mean alcoholic. Alcohol was poisoning her, shifting her whole personality. I had had some space from her for years, and I decided one year that I would call her on Mother's Day and simply lie to her and tell her what a great mother she was. She was old and sick, and she didn't have many years left, so why not? I called her and told her what a great mother she had been to me. And as the words came out of my mouth, they were true. I didn't mean she had treated me well, because she hadn't. I didn't mean her intentions were great. Sometimes they were, and sometimes they weren't. But as I told her that she had been a good mother, my life experience was finally augmented by my relationship with this difficult woman. My difficulty with my mother finally contributed to the richness of my life. In that sense, she was indeed a good mother. What a relief there was in telling her this. Concurrently, my ability to forgive myself for having hated her for so many years arose. It was such a simple act. I had no idea I would see such ramifications of healing. Finally, to be able to forgive this whole experience of humanity, with all of its functions, drives, aggressions, and desires, is to recognize what is untouched by any of that, what remains pure, innocent, and free even in the grossest of stories. In our desire to hold on to revenge, we actually keep ourselves from the experience of freedom. As with everything else, in our desire to hold on to one thing, we keep something else away. In the desire to give something, we actually receive. You can inquire directly within, what am I not willing to forgive? As you do this, you find another opportunity to bring to consciousness what has not been consciously seen, what might still be holding your mind in bondage. No effort is needed here, only the willingness to be completely honest. Once you have honestly seen what you are not willing to forgive, you might also find it helpful to ask yourself, what am I willing to forgive? Recognize forgiveness and savor it for a moment. It is important to not force anything, just to welcome all into the heart of consciousness. Can you forgive? Can you accept forgiveness?